So the first thing I'm going to do is select my files, and I'm choosing this one of my son that we did in our backyard. I'm going to make sure that I've got all the different pictures that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this moon, crescent moon that I have here with a pen tool. And I got these pictures off of iStock.com, which you can either buy one credit and get one picture, or you can do a subscription and get several pictures throughout a month or a year. After I cut it out, I'm going to copy and paste it to this picture of the sky that I've got here with some clouds, and just kind of manipulate it to the size that I want. I'm going to go back to the picture of my son and use the pen tool again and just meticulously cut out him away from the background. And this process takes quite a bit of time. It's very time consuming, but in the end, to me, the pen tool is a whole lot neater and cleaner than, say, using the selection tool. I cut out most of the string. I'm going to go ahead and add the string in later to what's missing. After you get it all cut out, you're just going to make your selection and copy and paste it to your clouds. And here you can see me resizing it to fit where I think it would look most natural, if that's possible, on a moon. Here I'm going to use the curves for just the moon layer and manipulate the colors and the light so that it matches the background layer. So here I went to the blue channel and I'm just kind of messing with it to see where it would best look to match it as close to the background as I possibly can. Here I'm just going to the RGB part and manipulating all of the colors so that the light and the shadows can match the background picture. And once I like those, I go ahead and just merge those two layers together. And now I'm going to create another curves, but this time I'm just going to bring it up to the top just so I can just manipulate my sun's layer and try to match him with the colors and the lighting to the background. This was really painstaking, simply because I'm kind of a novice when it comes to Photoshop art, and what I did wrong was I took the picture of my son probably in the brightest part of the day, only to add it to a night scene. I think if in hindsight I would have tried to take him as close to a night picture as I possibly could with appropriate lighting so that it wouldn't be so hard to manipulate later. So here I went to the color balance and I did a clipping mask, and now I'm just manipulating the colors. I'm taking away some of the blue, some of the magenta from him. I'm actually adding magenta. I'm adding a little bit more cyan to try to closely get that bluish tint to him as I possibly can. I'm going to go ahead and do a color balance to my moon layer. And I'm going to go ahead and add some blues. I'm going to add some more cyan to it. After that, I'm just going to merge those two layers together. I try to keep the layers without merging them as long as I possibly can. Again, I'm not great at Photoshop, so I haven't mastered the art of keeping all my layers open, because sometimes I can't figure out how to keep them separate from each other. And I end up merging everything together and just kind of fixing the whole picture later. Here I'm going to select just one individual cloud. This is also from iStock, and from there I'm going to go ahead and sort of clean up the edges. And take away the black. So what I'm doing is I'm adding pretty much a transparent background to anything that's black on what I've selected. After that, I'm going to copy it and go back to the background page and paste it. And you can see that the colors don't match. From this particular cloud doesn't match the background clouds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and at this point I decided that I didn't like the scale of my sun and the moon. It was a little bit too big for a picture that was set so far away. So what I decided to do is size them both down a little bit to make the composition of the whole entire picture a little bit more appealing, at least to me anyways. At this point I cut out, but I did the exact same thing to that cloud that I did to the moon and my sun. I just color manipulated it so that could match the background. And here what I'm doing is just using the clone stamp tool, and I'm just cloning more of the string onto the rest of the scene, and then I'm kind of cloning pieces of the cloud around him to kind of mask where it doesn't really match and make it look like it's going through the clouds instead of above the picture. So here, as you can see, I didn't do so good on the edges when I cut it out, and so it looks really cut out and really raw. So what we're going to do is just use a clone stamp tool and take clones of pieces of the sky background and just kind of blur the edges, move it in, and match it up so that you don't see that harsh line and it looks more a part of the background. This is kind of painstaking too. I wish I would have taken my time cutting it out a little bit better, and I don't think I would have had that problem. So here I'm going to do the exact same thing and use my clone stamp tool and clean up the blue edges that don't quite match the rest of the picture. So here I'm just going to take away the writing that I have on this yardstick that we used. We didn't have a fishing pole, so we just decided to use this yardstick. And then now I'm going to take away all of the writing off of it. And all I'm using is the brush tool, and then I'm sampling pieces of the stick that I would like it to match, and then just going over all of the green, orange writing. I wasn't too concerned with getting it perfect, simply because from far away you can't really tell, and I don't like to waste a lot of time on I'm not one of those detail-oriented people, like it has to be perfect. I'm pretty much if it looks good from far away, then I'm kind of okay with that. In here I'm just taking samples of the background color and kind of shading in the sides to blur it in a little bit more, to not make it look so cut out and pasted on the scene. There's probably a million better ways to do it than how I'm doing it, but at that moment that's just what I was thinking, and so I went ahead and went with it. I'm just using the brush tool again and sampling pictures from, the color from the background and just kind of shading in. At this point I decided that my sun still wasn't in the right lighting for the picture, so I went in with curves, and again I adjusted the colors to him. I had to make him a selection because at this point I kind of merged all of the layers together, and so I had to reselect him so that I could only manipulate the curves to him and not the entire picture. And I went in with the red channel, manipulated some of the red. Now I'm back to the RGB channel and sort of manipulating the entire scene. And now I'm kind of going back and erasing where I don't want that color manipulation or the light manipulation to occur, like around the clouds. And now I'm sort of erasing where we did that manipulation and sort of creating some highlights. So I'm taking away the curves that we did. So I went back in and selected him again, and this time I went to levels and I manipulated the levels on just him. Once I was happy with that, I went ahead and merged those two layers together, and then I decided to fix his hair because, as you can see where I cut him out, it wasn't completely perfect. And so with the clone stamp tool, I went back and cut the edges. Clone stamp the edges, sort of like the way I did the moon. And now I'm just working on the edge of his hair, on the edge of his head, where I kind of got the pieces of the background of the original picture. And here I went in with the brush tool and just black and kind of filled in the places where his hair was missing. So here, the edges of his body are still sort of raw. So what I did was I made a duplicate layer and completely blurred, I think it was about 20%, and I inverted the picture and went to my brush tool, used on white, and just blurred in the background on the pieces that I wanted. So I was trying to create a more depth of field because the entire picture is sort of in focus, and I didn't want that. I wanted sort of the focus to be on him and the moon. At this point, I went into my light links from KCC Light and picked which one I wanted and then manipulated it so that the light beam was coming down on him. And then I did a layer mask, and then I just sort of erased at 43% all the edges, and then I did some around him because we have to create the illusion that the light is hitting him, and so the back part of him wouldn't normally be as lit as the front part. So I'm going in and taking away the light leak where the shadows would naturally hit. Here I'm just going to burn the edges. And then burn some of the clouds to create some shadows. And then I go back and put some shadows back on him. And I try to leave his face alone so that it looks sort of illuminated. And the top of his foot, I leave that alone as well. At this point, I'm going in with the dodge tool and then highlighting where the light would naturally hit on his body. So like his shoulders, the front part of his chest, his hands, the front part of his feet. Now I'm going in back with the brush tool and using black at 9% and just going back and doing shadows. So a big portion of this picture is just creating shadows. and it's sometimes difficult to create shadows that are not naturally there. Like I said, I took this picture in the brightest part of the day, and I thought because we were under a covered patio that perhaps it would be easy to fix, but if I could do it over again, I would make sure that I took this, if I was going to do a night picture, to take the picture more close to a night scene. Here I'm just shadowing the moon underneath the clouds. I'm still creating more shadows around his body, around the clouds. I've merged all of my layers together, and I'm making a duplicate layer of the background. Oh, at this point I think I'm finished. Oh no, I do one more levels. So I add the levels to the entire scene, and I go to my sponge tool and I sponge around all of the scene except for him. Go back in and take away the sponge tool away from him, because I don't want him to be saturated with color. I just wanted the clouds and the rest of the sky. And then I bring it down to about 46% opacity. And then I just wanted him illuminated, so I did a curves and inverted the curves and just painted over him and the moon. And at this point, I'm done.